So we're back with various alliances and entanglements, some of which appear to be
entanglements.
Yeah, and Dr. Farrell, you were engaged in an entangling soliloquy about quantum entanglement. Can you continue where you left off?
Well, yeah, quantum entanglement is to a certain extent a manifestation of what was a theory that was developed by John Stuart Bell, an Irish physicist back in the 1960s, and basically it's Bell's non-locality theorem, and it more or less kind of predicts some of these phenomena. Well, what you have, in my opinion, Daniel, with quantum entanglement, is you have the physical manifestation of this idea that all information and all information storage ultimately is non-local in nature. All right, that's what this is really saying. And if that be the case, then what we've really got to in modern physics is the idea that even behind the material manifestation, there's an incorporeal, non-material realm. All right, and it's in that realm that information is stored. It's in that realm that information is actually processed. All right? Now, if you stop and consider the sweeping philosophical implications of that, what they're really saying is, if we were to use the analogy of the mind and the brain, all right, what they're really saying is that the mind is not located inside your skull, inside your brain.
Mine isn't.
But rather that, well, same here. What they're really saying is that your brain is located inside the mind, all right? Or rather, as I like to put it, that the local brain is kind of like a radio receiver. It's storing information out there, and it's tuning into that information. Now, all of that's very, very iffy and dicey, and it may sound like it doesn't have much of a practical application, but here's the practical application. This is a book by a British biologist that many of the listeners here may be familiar with. If you're not familiar with him, get a hold of him. His name is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. And this guy is driving evolutionists crazy because, of course, he's really tapped into this whole idea that there is a field of information, and that field of information is non-local. And biological life forms tap into it. One of the things that he points out about information transfer that is, again, it's driving the standard materialistic, Darwinist, mechanistic version of evolution nuts. And it's this. He points out that if you have the same species of monkey on two different isolated islands in the Pacific, and I forget what the species is, if a behavior is learned by one species of, let's say, how to run through a maze, all right, that behavior, for some reason, is picked up by the same species on another isolated island much faster than it would have learned that same behavior on its own. So in other words, somehow that information is being transferred from one locality to another. So what you have, in my opinion, is you've got, it's non-local, exactly, precisely.
It's not necessarily being transferred, but it may be non-local in the first place.
It's right, bingo, exactly. You're absolutely correct. To speak of transference in strict terms is an inaccuracy, because that information is out there in the field, and one species is tapped into it, and somehow, because of that, you've got a phenomenon of entanglement. You've altered the state of one system, and any other system entangled with that is going to pick up that alteration. And here's a key term in my opinion. It's going to pick up that alteration by resonance, all right? Now, I'm adding the resonance to it, but in terms of quantum mechanics, resonance is exactly what we're talking about. Let's go back to the electron. It's got 7 states it can be in, all right? If you configure a system of electrons over here to be in system D, and this system of electrons over here was in resonance with it, then they're going to pick up on D, all right? People keep asking me, how can you maintain that the Great Pyramid was a weapon and able to target things in non-local space? I'm maintaining precisely that it's tapping into this whole system of field of information. So let me go back to something else, and I'll wind up my remarks here. When I first wrote the Giza Death Star, I used very deliberately in those trilogies of books, I used the term information in the field, all right? This is precisely the phenomena that I'm talking about. It's this whole idea of non-locality, of states of information that exist out there that local systems, so to speak, tune into. They're like radio receivers, and you're tuning a dial into that system of information. So this is, these are all huge things. They have biological implications, obviously. They have implications for the whole idea of remote viewing, because I think, again, that is a system that is reliant upon this phenomenon of non-locality that goes in quantum mechanics. So physics is actually becoming, like it or not, physics is actually becoming a kind of metaphysics in the classical Greek sense, and it's talking about things now by dint of quantum mechanics, by dint of things like quantum entanglement. It's talking about metaphysics in the good old Platonic Aristotelian sense, and it's doing so now with equations that give a great deal more formal specificity and accuracy to the same types of things that you can find Aristotle or Plato or Plotinus or Iamblichus or Proclus or any of those people talking about. They're talking about the same thing, but now what they're doing is they're doing it with a lot more specificity. If you don't know Rupert Sheldrake, folks, get a hold of him. He's a kind of a fascinating guy, and he's doing in biology what needs to be done. He's saying, okay, we're looking at this phenomenon. What is its effect on biological systems?
So can you tell us the book title again, Dr. Farrell?
Yeah. Sheldrake has a number of books out. The one here is called Morphic Resonance. The subtitle of it is very, very interesting. The Nature of Formative Causation. And the other book that is very interesting by Sheldrake is this one. It's called The Presence of the Past. And then the subtitle of that one again is kind of giving you the clue of how he's approaching in terms of biological science some of the implications of these concepts. The subtitle of that one is called Morphic Resonance, in other words, the shape resonance itself and the habits of nature. There's all sorts of books out about this link now. Physicists are really coming to grips with the implications of this phenomenon specifically in terms of what it now spells for consciousness. All right? There are physicists even beginning openly now to talk of a psychophysics, just like they have talked in the past about econophysics, where they're taking their models, their mathematical models of modeling things and saying, oh, look, the way we're modeling quantum mechanics can be applied to economic systems. So, we had econophysics in the 80s and 90s, and now that's being taught in the universities. So they're doing the same thing. And I think all of this is pushing us to the point that the whole Cartesian materialistic foundations that science has been proceeding under for the last 2 to 2.5 centuries is now itself under dramatic assault. It's being shifted profoundly back
Okay,
to
with
kind
that,
of
let's
an
go ahead and
immaterial-
break because we're way over time.
Sure.
And we'll come back
Okay.
momentarily, and we'll continue this